Hi everyone! Today I have such a lovely project for you to watch. I made an orchid fairy from an old monsterhighdoll and I'm very happy with the result, considering my skills and what materials I can use. I always use a secondhand doll from an online store here in the Netherlands, and for this project I also used an empty yogurt container and a prop I found in a thrift store almost a year ago. I thought was perfect for my orchid fairy. For my fairy I used Venus McFlytrap, who was in a great condition I believe. She has those lovely leaf ears, so she's perfect for this project. I already prepared her for head shrinking and painting by cutting her hair. I got the rest of the hair out of her head, scraped the fluff from her head with a knife, and got rid of the face paint with pure acetone. Then I let her soak in acetone water mixture for 2 days. So my prop from the thrift store was a little plant table. When I saw it last year I thought it was so cute, but I had no use for it. I'm so glad now I bought it. I think it was just €1. The size is perfect for my fairy. But I didn't have a nice pot for my orchid in the right size, so I tried to make one. And the little table needed a paint job. And while I was sanding, maybe I could sand the container. The print wasn't removable, but sanding didn't work. Hopefully with some gesso it will be okay. And the table needed some layers of gesso and white paint as well. The plastic container I covered with air drying clay from Das in a terracotta color. Yep, no use for rings for this. Maybe this wasn't such a good idea. The clay was sagging all over the place. Maybe I could sand it smooth later? We will see. When it was almost dry, my girl's head was done shrinking. The flower table was painted, but I wasn't content with the flower pot. I have to think about it, what to do. Maybe I could use a bigger pot and put the made one in it. And what was I thinking here? I was planning on filling the pot with wooden cat litter. If they get wet, they break down into wood dust, but my homemade pot isn't water resistant. So I quickly swapped it out with some pre-made wood dust. And then the wood needs to be sturdy. After all, it needs to I need to anchor a plant in it. I thought the best way to do this would be with glue, diluted with water, so it reaches everywhere. I did this in stages, let it dry before I put the next one in. I didn't think of the moisture reaching the pot again, but that's what I realize now while editing this. Luckily, it turned out great in the end. It just needed a long time to dry. With thick wire, I started with the orchid, and I wanted it secure while the wood dust was drying, so I had to hurry up. I also put a lot of baking soda and superglue in there. I needed all the strength I could get. Don't worry, there will be more glue in it later. But I should have waited with the watered down glue till I got the baking soda and glue in there. It took a long time till all was dry. But I just let it rest and check later whether it turned out well and whether anything needed to be fixed. Time for some dismembering. I wanted my girl to sit, so some cutting had to be done. You know by now I never have a plan, so it forms along the way. I try various poses till I'm satisfied. Everything got shaped and sanded. I don't know what's up with these hands from Venus, but they had to go. Two different sizes. So weird. Wondering why that is. So I thought she would have to sit on the edge of the planter. And at this stage, I thought I would use this dark grey one. I would put the self-made one in it. So I glued her in a pose with baking soda and super glue. That becomes hard as a rock. But I will learn from Cat Million Studio. Her real pot broke. I believe it was her cactus fairy. So in the end, I did something else. I use a lot of baking sheets while I'm working. I find it very useful in case of spilling glue or using it to put the glue or paint on it. It's very versatile stuff, I think. I'm constantly trying poses. Her neck also needed some changing. I turned the neck as well as the stomach the other way around. Fixed everything with wire, super glue, baking soda and hot glue. The hot glue I have now is such a pain. It cools down so slow. Sometimes that would be an advantage, but most of the time you want the glue to cool down fast, like now. So I have time to try some more poses for the arms and the hands. Okay, there's my advantage. Fasting a bit forward, I put the terracotta pot in a yogurt container. I realized that the space between them wasn't okay, so I stuffed it with more wood, hoping that will be sturdy enough. I also put a watered down glue mixture in there. The container I cover with a layer of white glue and BS. I thought that would be a good base for clay or paint. At this point I wanted to get like a concrete look pot. And when the first layer was dry, I put a second layer on. I felt a bit like a really bad plasterer. The thick edge from my dark pot I liked, so I wanted to replicate that part. I secured it with the same mixture, of course. At this point, nothing was straight and neat anymore. Will this turn out well? I don't know. Time for my girl. Remember my post? She was hanging to dry with a droopy butt. The glue BS mixture I made was too runny, but with a second thicker coat, all was fixed. I like this part of sculpting with this mixture very much. I softened her head by putting it in acetone again for just an hour or so. It was the first time I used this method. I can't remember which customer I saw doing it, but thanks. I like this technique. Not much snipping and sanding needed. So her head looks too big right now, but that will shrink again. So this is how she looks like now. Got a lot of sanding to do. And then she needs a few layers of watered down gesso and white acrylic. While that was drying, I continued with the pot. I put thickening medium, sawdust and BS in grey acrylic paint, and I covered the pot with this. Hopefully this will look a bit like concrete. Oh my word, it was so crooked. And it was time to figure out how to make a thin stem for my orchid. I put a thin wire around the thick one. That way clay, or in my case the homemade porcelain clay, would have something to grip on. My homemade clay is about a quarter of a cup of cornstarch, 1 cup of baking soda and a quarter cup of water. I will put a link down below, and you put it over the heat till the water is gone and you have a nice consistency like clay. And after it was fully dry, I sanded the stem smooth. By now the sawdust with the glue was dry and sturdy. Yep, a lot of dust. Please protect your lungs if you do this. And I put some more clay on the pot to make it more even, constantly checking if it was straight. Better, but not perfect. Continuing with the leaves, I cut those and the flower pieces out of EVA foam and warmed them a bit with a hair straightener to shape them a bit. And covered them with a few layers of gesso and paint. And from my homemade clay, I made some flower buds and glued them on the stem. Normally I like it when I use alternative materials to the expensive ones I can't afford and get a nice or even great result with them. But on this project I would have loved to have some warbler or epoxy sculpt or something. I wasn't happy with the stem. It was way too thick. But there wasn't anything else I could use, I thought, so I'll have to get over it. All the other sculpting was fine with my clay. So my fairy got her base color with watered down acrylic. I screwed a hook in her head so she could hang to dry. The screw also helped me with all the layers of MSC. And of course the flower pot needed more paint. I filled the flower pot further with my homemade flock. I colored with brown acrylic paint. And I did some experiments with hot glue and a container with water. I tried to make some roots for my orchid. And after some tries, I think I got some nice ones. All the leaves were painted and dry, and I was very content with them. So I glued them together, and with a wire attached, I glued the leaves on its place. everything got more paint, but the footage was not very interesting. So fast forward a bit. And I was painting the roots and the leaves and the stem and everything. And the flowers needed some color. So I tried some color mixes. By this time I got a real live orchid as a gift, a little one with beautiful pink colors, and one flower already fell off. Maybe I could use it, so I covered it with white glue, hoping it would completely seal in and be preserved that way. Only time will tell if it did. Meanwhile, the first layer of paint was dry, and I put on a second layer with the purple from ultramarine and magenta. I used a few different shades, not too much difference, just a bit. The stems of each flower I tried to make from the porcelain clay. I colored with paint, but it was a bit unnecessary because the clay had to be sealed also with paint. But well, sometimes I forget such silly things. And at this point I was very pleased with the result. But when all was really dry, they were too dark for my taste. Something I also forget a lot. Acrylic paint dries much darker. I didn't like this at all. So I made some new flowers from polymer clay, just a cheap one from Action. And I guess by now I do see the difference between cheap and more expensive clay like Fimo and Sculpey. This clay was very delicate and brittle. Or maybe I baked it wrong this time, I'm not sure. But if you do, please let me know. I would love to learn from my mistakes. I also made the stems from polymer clay this time, and I glued them on the flower stem with superglue and baking soda when needed. And finished the stems with porcelain clay. And of course, when that dried, I gave it all a little paint as well to blend everything. So far as part one of this project, what do you think of my orchid so far? Is my fairy gonna be just as beautiful? I would really love to know what you think so far. Part 2 is also almost going online, so please try to check it out so you can see the finished doll. I'm so happy with her.